So guys, let's continue in part 2. Interpretation. Michael III staked his future on the scene of graduated. He thought Basilius must feel for him. Surely Basilius would serve him best. He owed the emperor his wealth, his education and his position. Then, once Basilius was in power, anything he needed it was best to give to him, strengthening the bonds between the two men. It was only on the fateful day when the emperor saw that impudent smile on Basilius' face that he realized his deadly mistake. He had created a monster. He had allowed a man to see power up close, a man who then wanted more, who asked for anything and got it, who felt encumbered by the charity he had received and simply did what many people do in such a situation. They forget the favors they have received and imagine they have earned their success by their own merits. At Michael's moment of realization, he could still have saved his own life, but friendship and love blind every man to their interests. Nobody believes a friend can betray, and Michael went on disbelieving until the day his head ended up on a peak. Lord, protect me from my friends. I can take care of my enemies. Observance of the law. For several countries after the fall of the Han dynasty, Chinese history followed the same pattern of violent and bloody coups, one after the other. Army men would plot to kill a weak emperor, then would replace him on a dragon throne with a strong general. The general would start a new dynasty and crown himself emperor to ensure his own survival. He would kill off his fellow generals. A few years later, however, the pattern would resume. Now generals would rise up and assassinate him or his son in their turn. To be emperor of China was to be alone, surrounded by a pack of enemies. It was the least powerful, least secure position in the realm. In in general in general Chao Ki-yongin became Emperor Sung. He knew the odds. The probability that within a year or two he would be murdered. How could he break the pattern? Soon after becoming emperor, Sung ordered a banquet to celebrate the new dynasty and invited the most powerful commanders in the army. After they had drunk much wine, he dismissed the guards and everybody else except the generals, who now feared he would murder them in one fell swoop. Instead, he addressed them. The whole day is spent in fear, and I am unhappy both at the table and in my bed. For which one of you does not dream of ascending the throne? I do not doubt your elegance, but if by some chance your subordinates seek wealth and positions, were to force the emperor's yellow robe upon you in turn, how could you refuse it? Drunk and fearing for their lives, the general proclaimed their innocence and their loyalty. But Sung had other ideas. The best way to pass one's days is in peaceful enjoyment of riches and honor. If you are willing to give up your commands, I am ready to provide you with fine estate and beautiful dwellings where you may take your pleasures with singers and girls your com- companions. The astonished general realized that instead of a life of anxiety and struggle, Sung was offering them rich and security. The next day, all of the generals tendered their resignations and they retired as nobles to the estates that Sung bestowed on them. In one stroke, Sung turned a pack of friendly vowels who would likely have betrayed him into a group of docile, docile lambs far from all power. Over the next few years, Sung continued his campaign to secure his rule in King Liu of the South and finally surrendered to him after years of rebellion. To Liu's astonishment, Sung gave him a rank in the imperial court and invited him to the place to seal their now found friendship with wine. As King Liu took the glass that Sung offered him, he hesitated, fearing it contained poison. Your subject's crime certainly merit death, he cried out, but I beg your majesty to spare your subject's life. Indeed, I dare not drink this wine. Imperial Sung laughed, took the glass from Liu, and swallowed it himself. There was no poison. From then on, Liu became his most trusted and loyal friend. At the time, China had splintered into many smaller kingdoms. When Qian Shu and the king of one of these was defeated, Sung's minister advised the emperor to lock these rebel up. They presented documents proving that he was still conspiring to kill Sung. When Chen Shu come, came to visit the emperor, however, instead of locking him up, Sung honored him. He also gave him a package, which he told the former king to open when he was halfway home. Qin Shu opened the bundle on his return journey and saw that it contained all the papers documenting his conspiracy. He realized that Sung knew of his murderous plan, yet had spared him nonetheless. This generosity won him over, and he too became one of Sung's most loyal vassals. Interpretation: A Chinese proverb compares friend to the jaws and teeth of a dangerous animal. If you are not careful, you will find them chewing you up. Imperial Sung knew the jaws he was passing between when he assumed the throne. His friends in the army would chew him up like meat, and if he somehow survived, his friend in the government would have him to super. Imperial Sung would have no truck with friends. He breeded his fellow generals with splendid estates and kept them far away. This was a much better way to emasculate them than killing them. which would only have led other generals to seek vengeance, and Sung would have nothing to do with friendly ministers. More often than not, they would end up drinking his famous cup of poisoned wine. Instead of relying on friends, Sung used his enemies one after the other, transforming them into far more reliable subjects. While a friend expects more and more favors and sits with jealousy, these former enemies expected nothing and got everything. A man suddenly spared the glutton is a grateful man indeed, and will go to the end of the earth for the man who has pardoned him. In time, these former enemies become Sung's most trusted friends, and Sung was finally able to break the pattern of cups, violence, and civil war. The Young Dynasty rules China for more than 300 years. In a speech Abraham Lincoln delivered at the height of a civil war, he referred to the Southerners as fellow human beings who were in error. An elderly lady chastised him for not calling them irresponsible enemies who must be destroyed. Why, madam? Lincoln replied, do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends? Keys to power. It is natural to want to employ your friends when you find yourself in times of need. The world is a harsh place, and your friends soften the harshness. Besides, you know them. Why depend on a stranger when you have a friend at hand? The problem is that you often do not know your friends as well as you imagine. Friends often agree on things in order to avoid an argument. They cover up their unpleasant qualities so as to not offend each other. They laugh extra hard at each other's joke. Since honesty rarely strengthens friendship, you may never know how a friendly truly feels. Friends will friends will say that they love your poetry, adore your music. Anyway, your taste in clothes, maybe they mean it, often they do not. When you decide to hire a friend, you gradually discover the qualities he or she has kept hidden. Strangely enough, it is your act of kindness that unbalance everything. People want to feel they deserve their good fortune. The receipt of a favor can become oppressive. It means you have been chosen because you are a friend, not necessarily because you are deserving. There is almost a touch of cond- condescension in the act of hiring friends that secretly afflicts them. The injury will come out slowly. A little more honesty or flashes of resentment and envy here and there, and before you know it, your friendship fades. The more favors and gifts you supply to receive the friendship, the less gratitude you receive. Ingratitude has a long and deep history. It has demonstrated its powers for so many centuries that it is truly amazing that people continue to un, under, underestimate them. Better to be wary. If you never expect gratitude from a friend, you will be pleasantly surprised how they do prove grateful. The problem with using or hiring friends is that it will inevitably limit your power. The friend is rarely the one who is most able to help you, and in the end, skill and competence are far more important than friendly feelings. All working situations require a kind of distance between people. You are trying to work, not make friends. Friendliness only obs- obscure that fact. The key to power then is the ability to judge who is best able to further your interests in all situations. Keep friends for friendship, but work with the skilled and component. Your enemies, on the other hand, are an untapped gold mine that you must learn to exploit. When Talleyrand, Napoleon's foreign minister, decided in 1807 that his boss was leading France to ruin, and the time had come to turn against him, he understood the danger of conspiring against the emperor. He needed a partner, a confederate, with friend could had trust in such a project. He chose Joseph Foch, head of the secret police, his most hated enemy, a man who had even tried to have him assassinated. He knew that their former hatred would create an opportunity for an emotional reconciliation. He knew that Foch would expect nothing from him, and in fact would work to prove that he was worthy of Talleyrand's choice. A person who has something to prove will move mountains for you. Finally, he knew that his relationship with Foch would be based on mutual self-interest and would not be contam- contaminated by personal feelings. The selection proved perfect, although the conspirators did not succeed in toppling Napoleon. The union of such powerful but unlikely partners generated much interest in the cause. Opposition, opposition to the emperor slowly began to spread, and from then on, Talleyrand and Foch had a fruitful working relationship. Whenever you can bury the headset with an enemy and make a point of putting him in your service. As Lincoln said, you destroy an enemy when you make a friend of him. In 1971, during the Vietnam War, Henry Kissinger was the target of an unsuccessful kidnapping attempt, a conspiracy involving, among other, and a renowned anti-war activist creates the Berrigan brothers. Four more Clothic, Catholic priests and four nuns in private without informing the Secret Service or the Justice Department. Kissinger arranged a Saturday morning meeting with three of the alleged alleged kidnappers, explaining to his guests that he would have most American soldiers out of Vietnam by mid 1972. He completely charmed them. They gave him some kidnapped Kissinger, but once and one of the remained a friend of his for years, visiting him on several occasions. This was not just a one-time ploy. Kissinger made a policy of working with those who disagreed with him. Colleagues commented that he seemed to get along better with his enemies than with his friends. Without enemies around us, we grow lazy. An enemy at our heels sharpens our wits, keeping us focused and alert. It is sometimes better than to use enemies as enemies rather than transforming them into friends or allies. Mao Mao Zedong saw conflict as key in his approach to power. In 1937, the Japanese invaded China, interpreting the civil war between Mao's communists and their enemy, the nationalists. Fearing that the Japanese would wipe them out, some communist leaders and advocates leaving the nationalists to fight the Japanese, and using the time of recuperate. Mao disagreed. The Japanese could not possibly defeat and occupy a vast country like China for long. Once they left, the communists would have ground rusty if they had been out the combat for several years, and would be ill prepared to reopen their struggle with the nationalists to fight a formidable foe like the Japanese. In fact, would be the perfect training for the communist ragtag army. Mao's plan was adopted, and it worked. By the time the Japanese finally retreated, the communists had gained the fighting experience that helped them defeat the nationalists. Years later, a Japanese visitor tried to apologize to Mao for his country's invasion of China. Mao interpreted, "Should I not thank you instead?" Without a worthy opponent, he explained, a man or group cannot grow stronger. Mao's strategy of constant conflict has survival key components. First, be certain that in the long run you will emerge victorious. Never pick a fight with someone you are not sure you can defeat. As Mao knew the Japanese would be defeated in time. Second, if you have a apparent enemies, you must sometimes set up a convenient target, even turning a friend into an enemy. Mao used this tactic time and again in politics. Third, use such enemies to define your cause more clearly to the public. Even farming it as a struggle of good against evil. Mao actually encouraged China's disagreements with the Soviet Union and the United States. Without clear-cut enemies, he believed his people would lose any sense of what Chinese communism meant. A sharply defined enemy is a far stronger argument for your side than all the words you possibly put together. Better off with a declared opponent or two than not knowing where your real enemies lie. The man of power welcomes conflict, using enemies to enhance his reputation as a sure-footed fighter who can be relied upon in time of uncertainty. Image the jaws of ingratitude, knowing what would happen if you put a finger in the mouth of a lion. You would stay clear of it. With friends, you will have no such caution, and if you hire them, they will eat you alive with gratitude. Authority. Know how to use enemies for your own profit. You must learn to grab a sword not by its blade, with which would cut you, but by the handle which allows you defend yourself. The wise man profits more from his enemies than a fool from his girlfriend. Fool from his friend. Reveals. Reversal. Although it is generally best not to mix work with friendship, there are times when a friend can be used to greater effect than an enemy. A man of power, for example, often has dirty works that has to be done, but for the sake of appearance, it is generally preferable to have other people do it for him. Friends often do this the best, since their affection for him makes them willing to take chance. Also, if your plans go awry for some reason, you can use a friend as convenient scapegoat. This follows the favorite was trick often used by kings and sovereigns. They would let their closest friend, a court, take the fall for a mistake. Since the public would not believe that you would deliberately sacrifice a friend for such a purpose. Of course, after you play that card, you have lost your friend forever. It is best then to reserve to scapegoat role for someone who is close to you but not too close. Finally, the problem about working with friends is that it confuses the boundaries and distance that working requires. But if both partners in the agreement understand the dangers involved, a friend often can be employed to great effect. You must never let your guard down in such a venture. However, always be on the lookout for any sign of emotional disturbance such as envy, ingratitude. Nothing is stable in the realm of power, and even the closest of friends can be transformed into the worst of enemies. So guys, this is second laws is second laws is never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. So next law is third. The third law is conceal your intentions. Judgment. Keep people off balance and in the dark by never revealing the purpose behind your actions. If they have no clue what you are up to, they cannot prepare a defense. Guide them far enough down the wrong path. Involve, in, envelop them in enough smoke, and by the time they realize your intentions, it will be too late. Part 1. Use decoyed objects of desire and red herrings to throw people off the scent. If at any point in the deception you practice, people have the slightest suspicions as to your intentions, all is lost. Do not give them the chance to sense what you are up to. Throw them off the scent by dragging red herrings across the path. Use false sincerity, send ambiguous signals. Set up misleading objects of desire, unable to distinguish the genuine from the false. They cannot pick out your real goal. Transgression of the law. Our several weeks, Ninian de Lenclos, the most infamous courtesan of 17th century France, listened patiently as the Marquis de Savigny explained his struggles in pursuing a beautiful but difficult young courtesan. Ninian was 62 at the time, and more than experienced in matters of love. The Marquis was a lad of 22, handsome, dashing, but hopelessly unexperienced in romance. At first, Ninian was amused to hear the Marquis talk about his mistakes, but finally she had enough, unable to bear imputed in any realm, least of all in seducing a woman. She decided to take the young man under her wing. First he had to understand that this was war, and that the beautiful countess was a citadel to which he had to lay siege as carefully as any general. Every step had to be planned and executed with the utmost attention to detail and nuance. Instructing the Marquis to start over, Ninian told him to approach the courtesan with a bit of distance and air of nonchalance. The next time the two were alone together, she said he would confide in the courtesan as would a friend, but not potential lover. This was to throw her off the scent. The courtesan was no longer to take his interest in her for granted. Perhaps he was only interested in friendship. Ninian planned ahead. Once the contest was confused, it would be time to make her jealous. At the next encounter, at a major fete in Paris, the Marquis would show up with a beautiful young woman at his side. This beautiful young woman had equally beautiful friend, so that Wherever the Countess would now see the Marquis, he would be surrounded by the most stunning young women in Paris. Not only would the Countess be seething with jealousy, she would come to see the Marquis as someone who was desired by others. It was hard for Nignon to make the Marquis understand, but she patiently explained that a woman who is interested in a man wants to see that other women are interested in him. Not only does that give him instant value, it makes it all the more satisfying to snatch him from their clutches. Once the Countess was jealous but integrated, it would be time to beguile her. On Onion's instructions on the Marquis would fail to show up at a affair where the Countess expected to see him. Then suddenly he would appear at salon he had never frequented before, but that the Countess at attended often. She would be unable to predict his moves. All of these would push her into the state of emotional confusion that is a prerequisite for successful seduction. These moves were executed and took several weeks. Nonyan, Nonyan monitored the Marquis' progress through her network of spies. She heard how the Countess would laugh a little harder at his witticism, witticism, listen more closely to his stories. She heard that the Countess was suddenly asking questions about him. Her friends told her that a social affairs the Countess would often look up at the Marquis, following his steps. Nonyan felt certain that the young woman was falling under his spell. It was matter of weeks now, maybe a month or two, but if all went smoothly, the citadel would fall. A few days later, our Marquis was the Countess' home. They were alone. Suddenly he was different man, this time acting on his own impulse. Rather than following Nunez's instructions, he took the Countess' hands and told her he was in love with her. The young woman seemed confused, a reaction he did not expect to become polite, then executed herself. For the rest of the evening, the avoided his eyes, was not there to say good night to him. The next few times he visited, he was told he was not at home. When she finally admitted him again, the two felt awkward and uncomfortable with each other. The spell was broken. Interpretation. Nunyan de Lenclos knew everything about the art of love. The greatest writers, thinkers, and politicians of the time had been her lover. Men like La Rochefoucauld, Melier, and Richelieu. Seduction was a game to her to be practiced with skill. As she got older and her reputation grew, the most important families in France would send their sons to her to be instructed with matters of love. Nonyan know the Nonyan know that men and women are very different, but when it comes to seduction, they feel the same. Seduction, they feel the same. Deep down inside, the often sense when they are being seduced, seduced, but they give in because they enjoy the feeling of being led along. It is a pleasure to let go and to allow the other person to detour you into a strange country. Everything in seduction, however, depends on suggestion. You cannot announce your intentions or reveal them directly in words. Instead, you must throw your targets off the scent to surrender to your guidance. There must be appro- appro- appropriately confused. You have to scramble your signal, appear interested in another man or woman, then hint at being interested in the target, then feign indifference on and on. Such such patterns not only confuse, they excite. Imagine this story from the court's perspective. After few of the Marquis moves, the sensed the Marquis was playing some sort of game, but the game delighted her. She did not know she did not know where he was leading her but so much better. His moves integrate her, each to them keeping her waiting for the next one. She even enjoyed the jealousy and confusion, for sometimes any emotions is better than the boredom of security. Perhaps the Marquis had ulterior, ulterior motives. Most men do, but she was willing to wait and see, and probably if she had been made to wait long enough, what he was up to would not have mattered. The moment of Marquis uttered that fatal word love, however, all was changed. He was no longer a game with moves. It was an artless show of passion. His intention was revealed. He was seducing her. This put everything he had done in a new light. All that before had been charming now seemed ugly and convincing. The courtness felt embarrassed and used a door closed that would never open again. Do not be held a cheat, even though it is impossible to live today without being one. Let your greatest cunning lie in covering up what looks like cunning. Observance of the law. In 1850, the young Otto von Bismarck, then a 35-year-old deputy in the Prussian parliament, was at a turning point in his career. These issues of the day were in unification of the many states into which Germany was then divided, and a war against Austria, the powerful neighbor to the south that hoped to keep the Germans weak and at odds, even threatening in intervents if they tried to unite. Prince William, next in line to be Prussia king, was in favor of going to war. and the parliament rallied to the cause, prepared to back any mobilization of troops. The only ones to oppose were the present king, Frederick William IV, and his ministers who preferred to appease, appease the powerful Austrians. Throughout his career, Bismarck had been a loyal, even passionate supporter of Prussian might and power. He dreamed of German, German unification, of going to war against Austria and humiliating the country, the country that for so long and had kept Germany divided. A former soldier, he saw warfare as a glorious business. This, after all, was the man who years later would say, "The great questions of the time will be decided not by speeches and resolutions, but by iron and blood." So, guys, continue on next part tomorrow.